This country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country. We had Tubman, Turner,
Frederick D.
Then they say Lincoln freed the slaves.
But slaves were men.
And women. And only we can free ourselves. Emancipation is not freedom.
There's a scene from the new reboot of The Proud Family. I used to love that show. Well, that reboot is now getting slammed by some folks. I think you can already imagine why, just in that short beginning. This whole thing throughout its talent show portion of this episode shows these black abolitionist kids talking about the civil rights era, the reality of slavery, and how we've gotten to many points that we have in our country based off it. Stacey Washington jumped on Fox News to talk about that, and they said that this whole I guess recital of this poem, I guess this music is not Bible-like. Let's watch this.
That's much different than the He-Man cartoon that I watched growing up. What's your reaction to that CRT cartoon, Stacey?
Okay, so we grew up watching Sesame Street and He-Man and other cartoons like that, right, Todd? So we were busy thinking about how we could, have superpowers and do amazing things. And these kids are being taught that they need to look at each other by the color of their skin. It goes against what Martin Luther King taught us. It goes against what the Bible tells us about unity and being together in the brotherhood of man. But most importantly, did you hear how horrible that sounded? No creativity, no actual fun for the kids. So what do we want to do? Well, parents, you need to be involved at your kid's school. You need to, if you see this kind of curriculum, object to it, go to your school board meeting and say you don't want your kids actually exposed to this.
Did you guys notice how that shifted to school? Somehow this is about school. Parents go to your school board meetings and tell them you don't want this curriculum in your kids' classrooms. Is this in their kids' classrooms or is this entertainment on TV, which is actually teaching them a few things? It always goes back to pushing back on policies and making sure the society does not understand what it is that the message was in that. As offensive as people may have taken it, if you listen for a second, the first question you should ask is, where's the lie? So let's go through some of these folks in wokeness over on Twitter did point out and post this, and many people responded to it. And they said, this is a scene from a Disney Plus kids cartoon called The Proud Family. Blatant anti-white propaganda. If you associate yourself as white because you're somehow for our history and how we've always oppressed certain folks and our systems of racism in our country, that's you labeling yourself, bro. You don't have to be on that. They're talking about our systems in place. Other folks said this. Molly Gibbons says, I had started planning a Disney cruise for next year, but after seeing this, I just can't. I think Disney cruises are gonna go down after this. So there's more about this because there's one point that they were very upset about, and there was a Lincoln part where they said Lincoln didn't actually, quote, free the slaves, but that emancipation also didn't equal freedom. And if you go to some of the details in the gray area surrounded by this, also Lincoln's purposes for doing what he did and how it was a bit of an arm twist to get him to that point, and what his end game objective actually was to save the Union. So there's lots of things going around involving that. Before we get to those details of that, I'm curious your first thoughts on this, Mondale.
I'm so, again, here we go again with Americans being American, forgetting the fact that this country is racist in its origins. Every cartoon they named, and if you go back and think about the black woman who was the mammy on Tom and Jerry, racist character of black women. If you think about Ping Pong, the owl in Ping Pong, racist character, black men in blackface. You think about so many of the cartoons and the racist nature of cartoons. Bugs Bunny. It is absolutely disgusting to believe that you're not supposed to use cartoon to teach kids about reparations and slavery. And I thought that, to me, the melody was wonderful. I think what is disgusting, though, is this audience, the audience of Disney in this cartoon, it's kids. In February, we're talking about Black History, which is supposed to be a month where kids learn, whereas the whole year is where we're supposed to expect adults to know about Black history. But we're not seeing that from white conservatives and then their step and fetch friends like we just saw. What we're seeing is this idea to keep people, who wants to be anti-woke? Who wants to walk around in a sleep, not informed about a topic? An idiot who's offended by education. Why? Because they know something they own or have, in this case, some false sense of pride, is based on nothing other than white supremacy, and it's a fallen statue.
We had these details of what Lincoln was talking about and some of the delays and debates that he also had, and his true stance on how this was going, which is what they touched on, which I think many adults don't even know, which we can't get to. But there's one thing that was illustrated here in some of these responses. These folks do know what the basis for critical race theory is. They also know that it's not being taught in these elementary schools. But what they did point out was, we don't want for people to understand the connection between the beginnings and origins of this country, who worked to help build it, because that was the theme of that whole song that apparently didn't have a good melody for that woman. That whole approach for that was to talk about how Black folks built this country. The free labor that built the entire infrastructure, the economic infrastructure that built up and made this country to what it is, and came off of that and still has remnants in our society and systems today. That's all that they're connecting. So they must know it, because when they hear it, they went, wait, this is a little bit of that truth. Again, I need you to tell me where the lies are. Just tell me where the lies are, and I'm willing to discuss that part. Just waiting for that part.